I'm joined by Boston State College alum and an owner of an honorary degree from UMass Boston, Dan Rea. Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Seth, and I'm also, in effect, a UMass Boston alum, not just through the honorary degree, but also through the fact that, as I understand it, Boston State College graduates can say on their resume that they're a graduate of UMass Boston, because obviously Boston State is now part of the UMass Boston institution.
Well, that's a great point and kind of leads me into one of the first things I wanted to talk about. When you were applying to school, it came down to UMass Boston versus Boston State. And at that point, the schools were at a little bit different points in their trajectory. Why did you choose Boston State? And what was your experience like as a student athlete at Boston State College?
Sure. Well, I chose Boston State, I guess, because it was closer on the trolley line. Actually, I'm being a little facetious when I say that. Boston State College in the mid-1960s had a great athletic program. We had some fabulous coaches. Eddie Barry, who had played for the Boston Bruins, was the hockey coach. Jim Nance, who was a great running back for the Patriots, was the wrestling coach. Bill Squires of Notre Dame, All-American, was the track coach. Jim Lesketoff of the Boston Celtics, his numbers hanging in the rafters at the Garden, was the basketball coach. Frank Murphy was the baseball coach. There were a lot of really good coaches. Gus Sullivan was the athletic director, and they really emphasized both sound mind and sound body. And that was one of the things that attracted me to Boston State College. I could have easily gone to UMass Boston, but UMass Boston was really in its infancy in the mid-1960s and had a building in Park Square, but it didn't have the facilities that Boston State College had. We played hockey at Boston Arena, which was a place I played high school hockey, but at that time, that's now Matthews Arena at Northeastern. It was a great place to play hockey. So it was a tough choice, but in many ways it was an easy choice for someone who wanted to play some collegiate athletics and get a good education.
What was your student athlete experience like? You played 2 years with the baseball team and freshman hockey with the hockey program. What was it like to get a chance to be a student athlete during the late 1960s?
Well, I never, in any way, shape, or form, threatened anyone for an All-American status. I was a goaltender on the freshman team, hockey team, played with a lot of my classmates who went on and had sterling varsity careers, including Dick Kelly, the son of Snooks Kelly, and Richie Craven, who was a great defenseman in Boston at the time. And after when Richie graduated, he went and played a fifth year of college hockey up at McGill. And I don't want to mention too many other names, but I will mention that one of the goaltenders who was ahead of me in terms of the depth chart was the great Bill Berglund, who eventually went on and played for the Cleveland Barons in the WHA and spent a career as a scout with the Montreal Canadiens. And when you're a goaltender and you're playing behind someone of Bill Berglund's stature, you kind of figure it out. There's not often does the second or third goaltender get on the ice when you have a guy like Bill Berglund in the net. Baseball, I was a pitcher, had a lot of fun with that sport. And at some point, again, I realized that I played and I wasn't going to the major leagues. I had to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And you started thinking forward a little bit, but it was great to play and wear the uniform of Boston State College, which of course now is the part of the heritage of UMass Boston.
The two schools merged in 1982, and obviously it's been a while since someone's taken the field or the ice with the name Boston State College. What do you want current student athletes, even UMass Boston alum who might be a little bit younger, or future UMass Boston student athletes to know about Boston State College and the athletics legacy that Boston State College had, because it was obviously a huge power here in the city for many decades?
It really was. And I think it really peaked in the 1960s. The hockey team played all over the country. The baseball team, we traveled all over New England. I think at that point we weren't considered Division I, but we were considered Division like 1A. So it was good athletic programs. As I mentioned, we had a guy that I played with, Terry Berry, who was drafted by the LA Kings. And I think could have played for the NHL. He was that great a player. And Terry went on to a career with the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Division in the federal government. We had a basketball player, Rodney Forbes, who was drafted by the Boston Celtics. So there were lots of really terrific athletes in all of the sports programs, led by great coaches. And that's the foundation, that's the heritage for the UMass Beacons. And I know that some of the UMass Beacon athletes have gone on to great experience as well, but it's all built foundationally on those who came before. And that's why I think I want to make sure that Boston State College is always remembered at UMass Boston, even as the years do go by.
On a personal note, you were inducted into the UMass Boston Athletics Hall of Fame, which obviously houses a lot of Boston State College athletes. What did that mean when you were inducted in 2011?
Oh, it meant a lot. Again, I was not the star of any team, but Dick Kelly, who has really done yeoman's work in terms of getting that project off the ground. Different people are in there for different reasons. I'm not in there for my statistics on the field, I'm sure, but I'm honored to be included with a lot of athletes greater than me from the Boston State College era.
It's 2021. Why now? Why now did you and your family decide to give such a large gift? What do you hope to see out of this gift in terms of the not only the space, but also maybe the continued growth of the UMass Boston Athletics Department?
We have always supported UMass Boston over the years. And as I said, there were some great people who have led this institution. I can remember meeting with Chancellor Joanne Gora, my favorite chancellor, Keith Motley, who I think did a terrific job. Keith himself, a basketball player at Northeastern University. You can't forget Charlie Titus, an athletic director that I think was the best in the country as far as I'm concerned. Two giants, physically and figuratively, two giant men, not only in terms of the academy and academia, but also sports and athletics. And an opportunity arose. I was approached by the development department, Mary Ellen Gilbane, and we talked about something that the athletics department needed, and they were looking to upgrade their varsity sports training facility. And all of a sudden, it appeared to me to be the right time. It's will bear my name. My wife is very shy, so her name will not be on it. Her choice, not mine. But it will have the name of Boston State College on it as a graduate of 1970. And so hopefully it will inspire current athletes and future athletes to be in a great training facility, to work hard, and to utilize. I've looked at the mock-up and I know what it's going to look like, and it's going to be just a fabulous place for athletes to go and work out between classes, after classes, before practice, after practice, and get themselves into the best shape possible to compete for the UMass Beacons and to win a lot of games and maybe even a few championships along the way.
With that, not only will Boston State College be there on the new athletic performance room, but also it's on the rink, the Edward T. Berry ice rink. You talked about Edward T. Berry,
Yes,
the
sure.
great head coach. What does that mean in terms of being a Boston State alum and having that recognition? Obviously, the two schools, you talked about building that foundation, kind of celebrating both schools' history and making it a bigger thing, because obviously for UMass Boston, we want Boston State alums to be proud of UMass Boston and vice versa.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a synchronicity, if that's the proper word. The last graduating class of Boston State College was 1982. So it's pretty clear that there are no graduates of Boston State College on the right side of 50. Just do the math. And over time, I was fearful that the memories of Boston State College, which was a great school, I mean, it was a great school, turned out thousands of teachers. You literally go to any school system, not only in Massachusetts and New England, but in many school systems around the country, graduates of Boston State College who went on to teaching careers. I assumed that at some point when I was young, that I could play some sports in college, get a degree, maybe become a teacher. and maybe even become a coach. I didn't follow that path, but many of my colleagues did. Their legacy lives on through their students, but I also hope that their legacy will live on now, not only with Coach Barry's hockey rink, named it rightfully so in his honor, but a training facility that memorializes the existence and the presence of Boston State College, perhaps not on the campus because the campus wasn't built. Boston State College was still in operation, but they were still two separate unities up until the merger. And now people will see that, hey, there really is a physical presence on the UMass Boston campus of what was Boston State College. And I just hope that the spirit and the teamwork and the athleticism and the student athletes appreciate and understand what came before. Because obviously, while they're at UMass Boston, they're continuing to build a foundation for UMass Boston athletes, student athletes who are not yet born. And it's a continuum. And this is what it means to me. We're all in a continuum. We're only here for a short while and do whatever we can that's positive during that period of time, and let the continuum move on through the decades and on into the future.
Dan, we asked you for a short quote to go along with the donation, and you responded, "Sports have always been ahead of society. When you compete against someone, whatever your difference is, you learn to respect them and earn their respect." Why does that quote hold significance to you, and why is it so important, especially at a public, diverse institution like UMass Boston?
Sure. Well, I do think that sports have generally been ahead of society. As a young boy growing up, I wasn't alive when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball, but certainly I've watched sports now open doors. And Jackie Robinson burst onto the scene of Major League Baseball in 1947. That was 7 years before Brown versus Board of Education, which was the desegregation Supreme Court decision of 1954. So I do believe sports tend to be ahead of things. And I've talked to too many athletes over the years, professional athletes, people who have gone on to great careers who never became professional athletes, but they talked about getting on that level playing field. Whatever your sport, whether it's an individual sport, in the ring, on the tennis court, or it's a team sport, on the baseball diamond, on the football field, on the ice rink, on the basketball court, whatever the sport is, you learn to respect your opponents, because more often than not, you're probably going to lose. and even if you lose, you'll go up against some people on the other team who you really are going to say, hey, I wish that guy or gal was on my team. And hopefully at the same time, if you treat them appropriately and you compete as hard as you can and compete fairly, you are in their respect as well. And that's why I think sports breaks down so many barriers within this society, and I hope it will always continue to do so. That's what I've learned over years, and maybe that quote will pass on that concept, and people at some point will say, hey, yeah, I'm learning to respect people who are different than me, but they're really down deep, they're the same. They're striving to do better. They're striving to compete. They're striving to win. And at the same time, if they lose, they'll shake the other person's hand and say, hey, get you next time.
Well, Dan, we so appreciate your time and your generosity. I can't wait to see how the weight room looks come August. And I'm sure that all of the current UMass Boston student athletes and future UMass Boston student athletes will be forever grateful for this very generous donation.
Seth, thank you very much for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And I just wish everyone makes all of those machines hum in that training facility, and on to more victories for UMass Boston Beacons.